Hello. They're not looking at me. Hello. Hello. All right. Here's the choir telling us it must be time, and it's good to see them, but especially to see you bold souls who had enough of Thanksgiving that you could rouse yourself on a cold Sunday and be here. We started Advent on the usual note of cold and snow, and by golly, you are here, which is marvelous. My name is Fred Wooden. I am the preacher in this house, and I share the clergy duties with Christopher Rowe, who is my colleague in education, and what we call him is the Minister for Spiritual Life and Learning, which is a little broader than Sunday school, don't you think? Your order of service looks different today for a reason. We not only took Thursday and Friday off as a staff because it was a holiday, but most of the office staff was sick Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, so we shut the place down because there are some gifts that you just don't want to give. And that's one you don't want to share. And our wonderful content communications director, Virginia Ansengruber, essentially created the order of service almost from her home. So if it's not quite the same, that explains why we were pushing things together in a new way. You don't have any announcements, but I can remind you that this is the first Sunday in Advent, that there are always things going on after church. And if I'm not, and I'm looking at Ed Smith up there, and I think he and I are inviting you, if you wish. Is today the first day, Ed? To investigate the nativity stories anew. Ed is an expert, a scholar in the original Greek languages that the scriptures were handed down in. And when you engage them in a new way, they come alive in a new way. So if you'd like to learn more about them, with, shall we say, peeling back all the assumptions you have, it would be fun to be with him. I'll be joining him at about 12:30, if I'm not mistaken, downstairs in room 109. There are other things going on. You can find them on the kiosk. Lots of other things going on all week. We have our first Advent banner up there, and in a few moments we will be lighting the first candle of Advent. And that means it's time for our prelude. And so I'll look over to Jonathan Took, our interim organist, and say, Jonathan, let's start worship, shall we? Welcome to Fountain Street Church. Once more, the cycle of the sun and the earth conspire to bring us to the diminishing light. When the sun lingers below the horizon far too long in the morning and dives far too soon below the horizon in the evening. We are called to love that which is harder to love, the dark and the cold. We are called to engage in a way of life that rewards us less conspicuously, and believe, trust, have faith that even here, warmth and light still grow. We are in the soil that is dark, for only here can the seed begin to find life. On this first Sunday of Advent, we think of faith not as that which we must believe, but as the belief beneath that there is something worth believing, even when we do not know exactly what it is. For the faith behind faith, we come together, and Jenna Penny will now light the candle of faith to remind us. Last week I mentioned words by Albert Schweitzer that at times our light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another, and so we're grateful for the spark of Heather Palmer, who relit the taper so that we could light the candle, and perhaps that is true for all of us, that sometimes we need a little help to get the flame going. Now I need your help to get the flame of Advent going by singing together as we gather in song with O Come, Emmanuel, number 225. Nice, cool ending there. Do have a seat. Ordinarily, my colleague Christopher would be doing the common learning, but I have for some years reprised a number of poems and readings that I enjoy very much, and this is my last shot. So I said, let me do this, and you can take it into the future. But I need my seasonal hat. This is a poem. I've committed it to memory, but I always keep it handy in case memory doesn't serve. It's by Ogden Nash, the boy who laughed at Santa Claus. It's about my hometown. In Baltimore, there lived a boy who wasn't anybody's joy, and though his name was Jabez Dawes, his character was full of flaws. In school, he never led his classes. He hid old ladies' reading glasses. His mouth was open while he chewed, and elbows to the table glued. He stole the milk of hungry kittens and walked through doors marked no admittance. He said he acted thus because there wasn't any Santa Claus. Another trick that tickled Jabez was crying boo at little babies. He brushed his teeth, they said, in town sideways instead of up and down. Yet people pardoned every whim and viewed his antics with a grin till they were told by Jabez Dawes, there isn't any Santa Claus. Deploring how he did behave, his parents quickly sought their grave. They hurried through the portals pearly. Jabez left the funeral early. Like whooping cough from child to child, he sped to spread the rumor wild. Sure as my name is Jabez Dawes, there isn't any Santa Claus. Slunk like a weasel or a martin through in nursery and kindergarten, whispering low to every tot, there isn't any, no there's not. No beard, no pipe, no scarlet clothes, no twinkling eyes, no cherry nose, no sleigh, and furthermore, by Jiminy, nobody coming down the chimney. The children wept all Christmas Eve, and Jabez chortled up his sleeve. No infant dared hang up his stocking for fear of Jabez' ribald mocking. He sprawled on his untidy bed, fresh malice dancing in his head, when presently with scalp a-tingling, Jabez heard a distant jingling. He heard the crunch of sleigh and hoof, crisply alighting on the roof. What good to rise and bar the door? A shower of soot was on the floor. Jabez beheld, oh, awe of awes, a fireplace full of Santa Claus. Then Jabez fell upon his knees with cries of, don't! And pretty please, he said, I don't know where you read it. I swear some other fellow said it. Jabez, replied the angry saint, it isn't I, it's you that ain't. Although there is a Santa Claus, there isn't any Jabez Dawes. Said Jabez then with impudent vim, oh yes there is, and I am him. Your language don't scare me, it doesn't. And suddenly he found he wasn't. From grinning feet to unkempt locks, Jabez became a jack-in-the-box, an ugly toy in Santa's sack, mounting the flue on Santa's back. The neighbors heard his mournful squeal. They searched for him, but not with zeal. No trace was found of Jabez Dawes, which led to thunderous applause, and people drank a loving cup and went and hung their stockings up. All you who sneer at Santa Claus, beware the fate of Jabez Dawes, the saucy boy who told the saint off. The child who got him licked his paint off. And if you can't get a lesson out of that, you're not listening. I have said more than 7 dozen times that the offering is, in some respects, our sacrament. And I know the choir is going to come on up here, so you can go do that. But it's a sacrament because you have to make it happen. You have to make it happen, not me. Long ago, in the earliest days of the Christian community, they could only hold their communion service, their Eucharist, their gratitude, their thanksgiving, if people brought the bread and the wine with them. And when it was over, they took the remainder to give to the poor. We don't do communion here, but it is a sacrament because we are making something holy. Your commitment to be present in the world in a way that transforms it. And during Advent, we point our offering, the half that we share with the community, to particular instances where we have been a particular commitment in the past. The Choice Fund has existed for nearly 50 years to help women who are in need of reproductive health care and services. They're often poor, they're mostly scared, and they're very much alone. And so we are grateful that you can help them in the coldest time of the year, at a very cold time of their lives. And so we invite you now to give of your best selves to those who are having the worst time, because in so doing, we make holy the things that really deserve our worship and our reverence. Your offering will now be most gratefully received. I am grateful this morning for the musical direction that Margie Dirks is bringing to us today, and for the choir that has shared that particular piece, which is actually part of a larger work. I actually heard it here in this room when the combined choral choirs of so many groups got together, and it was immense in terms of the choir. And there's a very long, very energetic part with lots of drums and maybe a future moment, but this struck me as being very suitable to the time right now. Sean Ivory is a local composer and the director of the local Grand Rapids Youth Chorus, or whatever it's called, among other things. So it's a home-bodied piece, and I like that. And of course, music is my muse. That's where we get the word, of course, the thing that inspires. Artists, they sometimes say, have muses. Picasso was so intensely impressed with a woman named Dora Maar that he painted painting after painting of her. He wasn't very nice to her, but he couldn't leave her alone either. Those who know Alice in Wonderland may know that Lewis Carroll was captivated by a young girl named Alice Liddell, and that's the person to whom he directed those books. That's why they're called Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. But for most of us who are not the makers of art, music or literature or poetry or theater or paintings or theater is the muse. It's what inspires us and renews us and gives us pleasure in the goodness and power of life, especially when it feels remote and distant. That's why I so love that hymn in our hymn book by Sarah Teasdale that ends with, "Spend all you have for loveliness, to buy and never count the cost. For a breath of ecstasy, give all you have been or could be." And haven't we, from time to time, bought that painting or that print or gone to that concert or just allowed ourselves to purchase whatever that was that gave us beauty and continues to. That's what a muse does. And that's what I've been doing all this year, sharing pieces of music that have inspired me, comforted me, renewed me. Not that they would do exactly the same for you, but because they might and because I want you to claim those that belong to you. Last week, for those who weren't here, I shared songs from my youthful teenage years, and I looked around the room and I saw more than a few of you singing along, so I think those were important to many of you as well. Today I cannot share the work because it's impractical, but I want to tell you about it. And insofar as words can describe music, you'll have to go home and listen to it yourself. But it starts with a story. In my first year of seminary, having acquired a degree in music theory and composition, I was offered a part-time job with the Chicago Children's Choir, which was across the street from the seminary, and my job was to be the assistant conductor, which meant that I conducted rehearsals when the founder was unavailable. And I can remember that fall that we were preparing works for Advent and for Christmas. And the work we were going to learn was one by a mid-20th century French composer, Francis Poulenc. I knew his work already, but I did not know this particular work. It's one of the 4 motets for Advent. He is formidably difficult. So it's not the kind of work you can just ask a church choir to do. So it's not for lack of your eagerness, it's just that it's a really tough work. And the first one is the text I'll be using each week in Advent, O Magnum Mysterium, O Great Mystery. And so I'm going to talk about the mysteries of faith, hope, love, and joy. But let me tell you about the piece of music. The first 4 measures are the most difficult. They capture the sense of mystery absolutely perfectly because you sing it so quietly you can barely hear the notes. And yet at the same time they shift chords so eerily that your brain says, that can't be right. And goes back and forth, and it conveys the sense of mystery quite completely. And this choir of 50 young voices, trained and very competent, could not get it right. I spent an hour working on 5 measures. So let's talk about mystery, shall we? Christianity, the religion that gave us Advent, really loves mystery. Catholics in particular contemplate the 15 mysteries of the Rosary, a regimen of prayer that uses the beads to count various prayers while you meditate on stages in Mary's life and in the life of Jesus that are all called mysteries, because there's something going on there that's mysterious, I suppose. And then there is, of course, at the center of the Catholic and the Christian community is something called the mystery of the Trinity, about which one cannot inquire. It is too mysterious to be understood. But you can find mysteries in other religions. Lots of the Upanishads and Hinduism work on mysterious conundrums about how things are and are not. Buddhism relies upon a kind of mysterious relinquishment and a sense that while there isn't a God, somehow there is an eternity, and how salvation isn't overcoming death, but losing oneself. And Judaism has the Kabbalah, and Islam has the Sufi experience. Now, when I talk about mysteries now, I don't mean like a murder mystery where there's something you can find out if you dig deeply enough. It's not something that's being hidden on purpose. It's not something nefarious and not a secret to be kept from others. It has to do with this word mystery, what we would call mystical. Liberal religion, though, is about the least mystical religion I can think of. We actually grew up from people who said, yeah, really? Really? And that's not unworthy. Perhaps you were told in some other religion that when you questioned something, someone was saying, well, that's a mystery. You're not supposed to understand it. And we all heard that as a really lame excuse to avoid a difficult question, didn't we? And some of you saw an inconsistency, either religiously or morally, in a church or a place you belonged, and someone said, well, that's part of the mystery of faith. And we have seen how those have been used to cover up misbehavior and misconduct. There is reason to worry about mystery being used as a kind of, shall we say, house of mirrors to keep you from seeing what really should be visible, to find out who really is the man behind the curtain, as the movie says. So for many of us, this idea of mystery is highly suspicious. And the only mystery we acknowledge is that so many people seem to buy it in the first place. Naturally, though, being the fellow I am, growing up in this kind of religion, I began to wonder if our rejection of mystery amounts to a belief that needs to be questioned as well. Something we accept without question, that anything worth thinking about is already very clear and obvious. You may not remember that I've brought this up before, because being the preacher I am, I learned one lesson is you want to be forgotten as soon as possible, because inevitably you will repeat yourself. If we are honest, and the liberal religious project is fundamentally about genuine personal and institutional honesty. If we are honest, the liberal faith is based on a mystery as much as any other form of religion. Not a belief in this or that mystery, but on what is the irreducible mystery that we exist at all. Now, this sounds a little esoteric, so let me bring it down to earth. This past Thursday, I'm putting away the dishes after Thanksgiving, and I'm bending over the cabinets, putting things away, and I stood up and startled myself because my wife had entered the room and I did not hear her. Prosaic moment. You've all had one like that when something unexpected turned up that you did not see coming. Am I correct? Have we not all had that experience? Of course we have. Why did you startle? You did not expect to see that, in my case, my wife, because I looked around, because I saw the room before I bent over, and I assumed the room was exactly the same after I bent over. That turned out to be a rash assumption, didn't it? Things can happen when I'm not looking. Now, I want to take a look at this because we do it all the time. A whole lot of life depends on assuming things are true that we do not know for sure. Most of you do not know what is beneath the floor right now. You're trusting it will still be there in the next minute or 12 and tomorrow. And you have reason from experience to think it will be, but there is no way to say you know it will be there. You don't know which and how many children are over there in the church house, but you trust that there are some. If there were no children, you would be startled. In fact, my sense is that if you were looking at me and I asked you to tell me who was sitting 10 rows behind you or 12, you wouldn't know right away, but you can be sure that someone is sitting somewhere behind you, and in large measure, you could be confident that they would be someone you've seen before. But in truth, if we are strictly honest, anything you cannot see or hear or feel right now is a mystery at this moment. I spent a couple of years turning a little corner of my yard into a rock garden. I did it because the sun falls so hard on that corner that nothing except awful weeds grow there, and I wanted to have it different. So I consulted the Zen garden concept. Why? Because it's made of rocks, which do not get bigger and may stay mercifully the same size. And I took out all the plants, and I laid down a weed barrier, and I put sand and rocks there. And then I placed a number of large stones that I had found in my yard. I didn't want to throw them away. And so I consulted, how does one place stones in a Japanese garden, sometimes called a Zen garden? And I discovered I couldn't do it. Because the key is to put stones in an arrangement such that whichever spot you're looking at them, you cannot see them all at once. That's how we go through life. We go down the street, and having seen what was coming, we assume it's still behind us. And we have every good reason to believe it still is. But there is no vantage point from which any of us can see everything. We go on faith that those buildings we see have people inside them. We go on faith. It's an elementary faith, so basic we don't even think about it. We live assuming we know the things we cannot see or hear. And this is good, for if we had to confirm everything at all times, we would get nothing done at all, would we? We are proceeding on faith at the most elementary level every day. But that also means we forget that every action we take is premised on something we may not actually perceive, and that too is an act of faith. If we are deeply honest, we would remember that the mere act of getting up and getting on with it is the most monumental act of faith you will commit every day. We have no empirical proof that this life is worth it, but we choose to invest in it anyway. The mystery is worth engaging. And I think this is the most fundamental mystery of all, that we exist and that we care about our existence. And I wonder sometimes why we are not gobsmacked and speechless all the time. Who remembers that scene from Our Town when the young girl asked the stage manager, is there anyone who lives every day and every moment? And the stage manager says, poets and saints, some, but mostly not, because it's too hard. We can't live completely in every moment because it would burn us up. Why then do we create these false mysteries when the real mystery is right in front of us all the time? I don't know, but Alice Walker caught it when in her book, The Color Purple, Shug and Celie are talking to each other. Shug says, listen, God loves everything you love and a mess of stuff you don't. But more than anything else, God loves admiration. Are you saying God is vain? No, she says. Not vain, just wanting to share a good thing. I think it bothers God if you walk by the color purple in a field somewhere and don't notice it. People think pleasing God is all God cares about, but any fool in the world can see that God is always trying to please us back, making little surprises and springing them on us when we least expect. For Shug Avery, religion is noticing the miraculous and the mysterious everywhere and all the time. I suppose my problem, if you want to call it that, with conventional Christianity, the reason why I am not one among several, is that it overlooks the mystery that is right here and then creates these phenomenal imaginary mysteries that no one can prove even exists. We have all the mystery we want looking at us right now. And when I think about it, if you read the Gospels, any of them, Jesus does too. He looks at the flowers and the seeds, the birds, the foxes, the bread, the fish, all that stuff, and points to its miraculous and mysterious qualities all the time. And then says, the kingdom of God is among you. It's not over there, it's here. And truly it is. But only if you're willing to let the mystery of it be present. And sadly, over time, Christianity has let go of that amazing mystery that was right there and substituted something far less grand when you think about it. Early in my career, there was a fellow named Matthew Fox, a Dominican monk, who made a splash with a book called Original Blessing. And his point was that we should not focus our religion on the original sin part, but on the original good part. And it really is about this very thing, that our existence, creation, the universe, is at least as important to our spirituality as the sins that we all commit. And it is also a gigantic act of grace, a gift, which we did not earn and do not deserve, but nonetheless have. Now, I don't mean to dismiss the idea of sin altogether, and humans can be quite bad. If anything, liberal religion needs a more robust appreciation of the permanence of sin, because as Will Durant observed, every form of government tends to perish by an excess of its basic principle. And I apply that to us, meaning if we think too much how good we are, we will be very much surprised at how bad we continue to be. But right now I want to set that aside and say we do have a task as the liberals in the world, as the religion of engagement with the world as it is. That this original blessing, this universal mystery, is vitally needed in these cynical times when goodness itself is suspect. We are among the few institutions that are willing to stand up for the common mystery, what Gary Dorian a couple of weeks ago called natural religion, that thing espoused by Duncan Littlefair, whose words are painted in our narthex. That is, to be grateful for the incredible gift of life. Advent is traditionally a time to prepare for something that is coming. Make your house fair as you are able. Make your house fair as you are able. Trim the hearth and set the table. That's what one of our carols says. And we're doing exactly that. We're dressing up the church in our houses. So I guess this morning I'm asking you to realize that the guest you're expecting is already here. That the feast has already been cooked, that the mystery is always present. Perhaps it was the common mystery that sent me this poem by Mary Oliver that says it in better words. She writes, "Dear Lord, I have swept and washed, but still nothing is as shining as it should be for you. Under the sink, for example, is an uproar of mice. It is the season of their many children. What shall I do? And under the eaves and through the walls, the squirrels have gnawed their ragged entrances. But it is the season when they need shelter, so what shall I do? And the raccoon limps into the kitchen and opens the cupboard while the dog snores. The cat hugs the pillow. What shall I do? Beautiful is the new snow falling in the yard, and the fox who is staring boldly up the path to the door. And still I believe you will come, Lord. You will when I speak to the fox, the sparrow, the lost dog, the shivering sea goose. Know that I am really speaking to you whenever I say, as I do all morning and afternoon, come in, come in. Invite the mystery into your view, into your ears, into your life. Appreciate its obscurity. Appreciate its gift. Carl Sagan, whose zeal for science was almost spiritual if it truly wasn't, said, "The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam." That's the faith we claim, to believe that even a mote of dust and a sunbeam is a gift beyond measure. So you who await a miracle this season, behold, it is here. Whether you see it or not, it is present. And I find that a faith worth believing in. Don't you? May these words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer. I think now of those whose lives came to their conclusion at this time in years past, and crave their blessing upon these words as I enter into and we invite you into a time of prayer. I lift up the names of Kathleen Bucknam and Carol Bagby, of Ron Bilesma, Shirley Wilmart, Neva Brew, Ben Peterson, Bill Koistra, Carolyn Clark, Bonnie Price, John Bissell, and Lillian Honaker. God, filled with mercy, dwelling in the heavens' heights, bring proper rest beneath the wings of your presence to the souls of our beloved who have gone to their eternal rest. May you, who are the source of mercy, shelter them beneath your wings eternally and bind their souls to you and we, the living, that they may rest in peace. that we may be at peace. And therefore we say amen. And so now we lift our hearts in silence for the prayerful moment that this hour requires, not that we so much turn inward, but that we notice outwardly with the eyes of innocence, with the eyes of the child that never perishes, the eternal mystery that is now, is us, is this, and then, and all, that we may welcome it in as the guest who is ever present in our lives. So let us pause in prayer, and so let us lift our hearts, broken and whole, on this occasion. I invite you now to turn in your hymn books to hymn number 241. This is a truly beautiful text and tune. Christina Georgina Rossetti penned this poem many, many years ago, and it has been set by several different composers. I think the reason I love it is because it asks us to bring our simplest selves to the largest of hopes. Shall we join in singing together hymn number 241, apt on this first snowy day in December, in the bleak midwinter. Mary Oliver offers these words as we leave today. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things. To love what is mortal and hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it. And then, when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. Hold on to this moment, friends, for this day, like every day, is one divinely crafted and made. We rejoice always in it and are glad, and when we let it go, have faith that tomorrow will bring another gift. And so let us be present in the world until we return again. Go in peace. Go in faith. Amen.